Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll get started in just a minute once everybody gets a chance to come on in from the waiting room. Hey everybody, we'll get started in just about 30 seconds. All right, Nick, you want to go ahead and kick things off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Maggie. And good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're sitting. My name is Nick Sargent, president of SIA. Today we have a really cool town hall, and we're partnering with Backcountry Magazine to talk about a really important topic leading into this winter season. After the sudden close of resorts in the spring, we saw an increased traffic and accidents in the backcountry. I know we were all wanting to get outside and we weren't finished with winter yet, but we did see a significant spike in backcountry traffic, which was great. But there's also a lot of areas that we need to really be cognizant and aware as we enter the backcountry. Early indicators are including retail sales and consumer survey shows that people are equally as enthusiastic to get back into the backcountry this season. I think the panelists and myself included are really looking forward to that. We need to make sure before we head out that we're properly equipped, we have access to the resources to help us navigate the backcountry, and we know before we go. Today we're going to talk and learn from people deeply entrenched in the backcountry culture. So before we get going, I want to give a special thanks to our moderator, Adam Howard, who many of us all know as Howie. He's the publisher of Backcountry Magazine and the perfect person to help guide this discussion. So introducing the town hall and the panelists, today's discussion is called Selling the Backcountry Responsibly. And I'm pleased to welcome today's panelists, Nikki Champion, avalanche forecaster, the Utah Avalanche Center, Mike Donohue, owner, Outdoor Gear Exchange, Katie Ertel, SVP of Mountain Operations, Aspen Snowmass, Brendan Madigan, owner, Alpinist Sports, and personal friend Kim Miller, and CEO of Scarpa North America. Today's town hall is going to be a conversation between our panelists. We encourage you that you submit questions using the Q&A tool at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try to answer as many of the questions as we can and as time allows. In the event we don't get to your question, we will get you some answers at the after the conclusion of this panel. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Howie to kick things off. Have a great panel. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. Welcome, everybody. Greetings from Vermont, where out the window I see a little snow on the summit of Mount Mansfield, which is pretty exciting. As we were getting ready for this panel, I reached out to each of the guests here today and just did a couple individual conversations. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and coming from both a mountain ops background as a ski patroller, but also obviously the backcountry media world as it is, we talked a lot about how historically and traditionally retailers and media in the outdoor industry had an obligation to their customer, because once they left the shop with the goods, if you will, they were on their own. So preparing those customers with knowledge, mentorship, community has been a tradition in that side of the industry since its inception. On the other side of the equation, you have the traditional ski and snowboard industry, whether it's resorts or retailers and manufacturers. And their obligation was a little different. Yes, they would sell them products, they would fit their boots, they'd turn their screws to make sure their bindings released. But beyond that, the obligation really fell then for safety on the resorts. And so now that we're seeing a lot of real interplay between the backcountry community and the resort community, whether it's uphill skiing at a resort or whether it's, you know, newbies to the backcountry going out into the wilderness. There's a real kind of blending of these two cultures that I think we all recognize. So where I wanted to start today was with Kim Miller, because at the very root of this, before we get into selling anything, we have a great deal of sharing that we're obligated to do. And you can't share without having a value system from which you draw upon. And I would like to start with Kim Miller, because, you know, Scarpa arguably has the deepest tradition here, perhaps with the exception of Aspen, for, you know, establishing a real value system, not only in Italy, but obviously throughout the world and here in North America. Kim, tell us a little bit about how your value system informs how you relate to your customers, your retailers, and your community.
Thanks, Howie, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this important conversation. I think that, you know, it's not just about business in the context that I'm going to speak to. I also want to say at the beginning, I know a lot of people on this panel, and I've gotten to know other ones, and I think all of us would agree. I won't speak for anybody else, but we're really not trying to sell anything to you today, except for an idea and an opportunity around the thinking around what does it look like to transition within snow sports from different disciplines, and what are the differences? Now we're talking about going for many people from on resort skiing into the backcountry. We've seen it. This isn't speculation. We saw it all happen. This is now historic data point. And we're trying to think about our bigger responsibilities within that. If you're speaking about resorts or forecasting or retailing or making products or speaking to it from the media, I think we all came together in our early discussion about the higher understanding that Howie's talking about. All of us generally come down to the basis, the foundation of our business is based on our values and our principles. That's what helps guide us. A lot of us in the backcountry space and snow sports space in general, before we ever got into business, we had our values and our principles around the sports themselves. We're not just talking about the business, we're talking about the sport. My philosophy is if we follow the sport, the business will come. And if we take the responsibilities we should to nurture that and guide it, that is where the real opportunity is. The progression of a brand, in our case, Scarpa, about what we think is important around our values is first, clearly identify them. Our values really aren't about selling boots. That's the vehicle we use to kind of speak to that. Our values really are around health and wellness, getting people into nature, doing things outside that are adventurous with people that you really care about. That's our secret evil plan. Don't tell anybody, but that's what we think is the real value behind what we do. We also think one of those values is to be really responsible about how we do it, where we're talking about sustainability or trying to increase inclusion and equity in our sports, and education, and being, as you said, Howie, good mentors. Everybody on this panel has a lot of experience in the snow sports industry, and specifically in the backcountry space. And it's not just professional, it's personal. I'm guessing that most of us came to that based on our passion, not for fame and fortune. So if you believe all those foundational things, I think we share the value that it's our responsibility to speak to the hidden part, the not so obvious part of getting into the backcountry and being a backcountry participant, whatever you decide you want to do back there. And it's part of the job, simply put. So we don't just try to sell people boots, we tell them, here's the resources to get more information about what we can't impart to you. Here's the places where you can learn. Here's the places where you can practice. And don't forget, what you're probably about to embark on, what you are embarking on is a beautiful and amazing journey. But you have to be reasonable about, it's not easy to learn everything you need to know. It's a progression. And there's a lot of things that aren't obvious at first. it's as Howie said, the ski areas have taken the responsibility for, if you get hurt, they haul you down. If there's avalanches, they try to mitigate that. And even the resorts will say it's almost impossible to get rid of those. Nikki is trying to tell you, hey, the conditions are like this out there. We're trying to tell you all the things that you need to know. But the most important tool here is our brains, our knowledge, and our experience. And those things can't be honed up without flight time and tapping into all those resources. Everybody on this call has a responsibility to share that with you and accepts that responsibility. So I think I hope that's what you wanted. That's what I think, Howie. Thanks for asking.
Well, I think you pretty much covered it. Let's talk a little bit more about this responsibility, and we'll each weigh in on this because, as you say, Kim, we all do have that responsibility. Brennan, I'd like to start with you. You know, and like most retailers, you are a community member, and you have an obligation to your community, and you've done a lot over the years to establish yourself there as that, you know, kind of arbiter of information. What are you planning on doing this year that perhaps you weren't planning on doing before when it comes to the educational side for your customers, for your community?
Well, that's a really fair question. I would say we've kind of operated under the same principle all along, in that we feel a moral obligation, which Kim kind of spoke to not only provide great customer service in terms of, you know, qualifying the customer, fitting the customer, that kind of thing, but also to give them the next steps. You know, as a 20+ year retailer, selling is easy, but that's also not why we're in it. We're in it to give back to our community and to pursue a lifestyle job. So I would say we're doubling down on our educational efforts, and that is, you know, taking the customer who, you know, has bought a new package and can afford to buy a new package and pay for education for the next specific outlet. So kind of a do not pass go before you have these boxes checked. And we work very closely with the local guiding outfit, Alpenglow Expeditions. You know, one of the best in the business. So we have a very fluid channel to, you know, referring customers there for safety and expertise.
Mike, where do you weigh in on this? Obviously, you're in a little bit different sort of location, being in the metropolis of Burlington, but
Sure.
you also have a huge university in your backyard. How do you go at this at OGE?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off by saying, as a year-round outdoor outfitter, we've seen a massive surge in interest in people getting outside. It's a great way to be socially distanced right now. It's a great way to get exercise. It's a great way to de-stress. There's massive benefits to, you know, people being able to be outside. As we transition to winter, safety is even more important. Like you mentioned, we've got the University of Vermont and several other colleges nearby. And we got into the whole ski business through the backcountry. So we've been dealing with backcountry skiing, not having ski patrol around, dealing with fickle conditions since our beginning when we focused on telemark, and then alpine touring equipment, and have moved from there into a full Snowsports shop. With that said, we're, you know, as focused as ever on backcountry, and the market's come along with shift bindings and more options for split boarding. More and more people are picking up a rig where they can skin at resorts or go into the backcountry. And every staff member, whether they have backcountry experience or not, most of them do. We're making sure they are well aware of the education that's needed, that every skier who's getting a free hill, whether it's touring or tele or split boarding setup, knows what they need to be in the backcountry safely. And we feel our job is education as much as anything else. We have resources and tools in addition to all the equipment that people do need. And people do need to take some personal responsibility, but they also need to be aware that they need to do that. They need to be aware that there is risk from avalanche, from the elements, and find a mentor to apprentice with or take courses. There's great videos and resources online, but actually learning from a person is really key, especially when you're trying to get a feel for snow safety.
Right. Well, let's take it out to the backcountry, or at least take it out to the mountains for a second. Katie and Nikki, you're both, Katie, you're in Aspen, obviously. Nikki, you're with the Utah Avalanche Center. I'd like you to pray. I'll start with you, Nikki. Set the scene for us a little bit. Obviously, when the resorts closed down throughout the country last year, the surge in interest in backcountry skiing was massive, and also massive was some of the negative outcomes that we saw in the Wasatch. Paint me a little picture. What were some of your observations?
Yeah, so like Brendan and Mike both said, obviously users increased tenfold during April, and kind of COVID in general. We had about 100 human-triggered avalanches in the Wasatch during one period, April 16th to the 18th. We had 50 human-triggered avalanches in a moderate to considerable danger day. So we've had a lot of new users traveling with techniques that kind of suggested that they haven't spent a lot of time in the backcountry. And one of the big issues we were running into is how to reach these new users. A lot of our traditional users knew about our resources, and we're still checking the forecast, but we introduced a lot of new users that may not know that our products exist and where to get them. And I think that's where the shops and the resorts can really come into play. They can help introduce these new users or these non-traditional users to the products that they might not even know is offered.
Right. And Katie, you saw your own surge after you guys ceased operations. And Aspen has been known for the last at least half decade as a real leader in the uphill traffic movement, or the uphill skiing phenomenon. You even did a little grooming after your operations were closed for your guests, for your community. Tell us a little bit about some of your observations and some of the things you saw that you weren't perhaps expecting to see.
Thanks, Howie, and great to be here. Yeah, we did experience a big surge immediately after we shut. So on March 14th, the governor of Colorado shut down all the resorts. And by March 15th, which was a Sunday morning, we had massive numbers of people going uphill. In that time frame between March 15th and about April 16th, we saw a lot of sales. So some of our snowboard and ski shops are starting to sell backcountry equipment and rent backcountry equipment. So we've been putting a lot of time and effort into our education process in the years leading up to this. But we weren't prepared for the surge that descended upon us. One of the things that we really had to do on a day-to-day basis was make sure that we had people out in parking lots, at the base of resorts, at the top of resorts, trying to help people understand that, with COVID, we have to consider all the safety issues around health and distancing, but we also have to recognize that none of our mountains were being mitigated or controlled any further. So while we did have some grooming out that wasn't official, it was very little. We were trying to groom one or two grooming strips down so that people had a safe egress off the mountain. What we've found as well this year is that we're starting to see a lot of people coming into shops around the Aspen area and Snowmass looking for uphill gear, going to Solomon and Atomic and Blizzard and all of those companies and really reaching out to see if that's available. So we're expecting it to be quite busy this year with our change in products aligned with the idea of people wanting to get out for their mental health benefits and their physical health benefits. We're expecting another huge year with uphilling in that respect. And we've done some things to control that. We're looking at education outreaches as well. We're working with Mountain Rescue, Aspen Expeditions, and Aspen Alpine Guides to work through guide services and educating there. We're working through the city of Aspen and with the community, and lastly with the Colorado Avalanche Information Center. We've got some folks that live here locally, so we're in communication with them. And our next big step, hopefully, is to do a virtual town hall with a large part of our community, along with ads in the paper, as well as information on our website, that is so important that you need to know before you go. And if you're going to leave the resort, it's a whole different world out there in the backcountry than it is on a resort that's controlling and mitigating our surfaces.
Right. And here you are, like every other ski resort in the country, trying to figure out exactly your procedures, even for a normal, even during a normal year, your procedures around uphill traffic is probably a small part of your overall day-to-day headspace, right? And so now you've got that plus everything else. I know that as we're talking about doing we do an educational tour around the country, which many of you have participated in, and so many of the resorts we talked to were like, we're not ready to talk about events yet. We don't know how we're going to address uphill traffic, let alone, or, the base lodge or whatever. So, I think one of the big things that comes to my mind, and one of my chief concerns is, frankly, and I think we all have it, is the overuse of the backcountry, or even the overuse of a resort that has an uphill policy that's very accommodating. And these choke points, parking, just, masses of people in areas where you're not traditionally expecting them. Kim, I'm going to address this to you as one of the veterans among us, and I lump myself into that too now. But, the traditional user is used to a certain type of experience in the backcountry, and now there's more sharing going on. What sort of obligation does that veteran skier or snowboarder have when it comes to dealing with this growth wherever they may find it?
I'd say that the veteran, all of us that are consider ourselves veterans or experienced, share in this responsibility of mentoring. I guess it's the best way to say it. Most of us learn a lot of the things we know from somebody that was a mentor. We didn't go to school. It was a friend, a parent, somebody that was a teacher. A lot of us learned how to ski that way, I think. And so this is part of the community give back. This is kind of the cycle of knowledge and so many of the unspoken rules. But I think it's really important, first of all, to make everybody aware that this is a great place, but if you want to go here, there's things you got to do. There's things you got to learn. There's more to it than meets the eye. And the second thing is to be really responsible all the time while you're out there. And this gets really tricky. You don't want to have to become a cop in the backcountry. And that's why, to shift the question a little bit, is that the collaboration between all of us, our industry, the resorts, everybody saying the same thing is really being on the messaging. I'll give you an example. Look both ways before you cross the street. Buckle your seatbelt because that saves lives. This is kind of the public service mentality that we all need to adopt and continually keep pressing, whether you sell the gear, whether you make the gear, whether you are at the place that people use the gear, or if you're one of your profession focuses on trying to mitigate risk around the sports. I really believe that still in these smaller sports, I'll say it that way, the community sets a lot of the ethics, if you will. When we buy a pass for a resort, most of us don't realize we agree to something called the skier's responsibility code. We do that by default. We have not articulated that in the backcountry snow sports space. And by the way, there's a lot of ways to get in the backcountry that don't expose you to avalanches and all this scary stuff. And that's part of the progression discussion. But I think that the universal mentality around messaging and the public service statements around that are really important. And it goes deep. Don't park your car in a silly way. You go to Teton Pass on a weekend, and that happened 10 years ago. Every popular place has been feeling this pressure for a long time. The Wasatch, a very steep and narrow range, the Aspen Valley, but there's more of that than we've ever seen before.
Yeah. Nikki, what are you seeing, and what sort of outreach is UAC doing that they haven't previously done?
Yeah, so one of the main things, we're trying to make education as accessible as possible. So we just launched a new e-learning module for the Know Before You Go last week. It's available online, so anybody can work through that early season. We're recording a professional Know Before You Go. So we offer the live ones often in the Wasatch and all across the country and the world, but we're recording a professional live Know Before You Go that's gonna be available. So shops can put that out to their community members, to their employees, to get everybody on that same page. We're also gonna do like a similar thing that Katie talked about. We're gonna be at trailheads starting early season, as soon as it snows, trying to reach out to some of those new non-traditional users and the old users and just be there in person, getting the word out, reaching people in an area that they feel comfortable. We came off a spring snowpack, and a lot of these people were touring at ski resorts. They feel really comfortable at the ski resorts. So we want to reach out to them in the fall when they first start entering a new fall snowpack, and communicate with them the products that we have available, where they should get that information, and how they should get some of that information. As well, we're going to continue offering our Know Before You Goes virtually. So if your shop wants to have one in person or one of your streaming services, even through social media, we're going to continue offering those. You can reach out to us and we'll live stream that directed to your zone or to your shop or to your community, whatever. We can personalize that a little bit more. And we just kind of want to keep shops in the loop. We want to keep the messaging the same. We want to have employees have training so that when people come in and they start to ask some of the questions, all the employees do have the same answer and are able to give those questions and point people in the right direction.
Right. And I'm seeing some of the questions pop up here on the Q&A, and my friend Mike Cannon actually would love to work with you guys at DPS. So we'll be sure to connect you there. Just real quick, I wanted to also, last week when we spoke, Nikki, you talked about, and frankly brought back a painful memory for a lot of us, that avalanche that happened inbounds at Alta before they opened. I guess it was back in 2010 or so, that took Jamie St. Pierre's life. And so many people, as you pointed out, they're coming off a spring snowpack, or they're skiing, they're coming off skiing at Alta, which has been compacted all year long, and then was closed down. How do you get the message out that, hey, if the mountain's it's still a mountain and they haven't done any work? How are you having that conversation? How's that going with, especially like Alta and Brighton, say, that typically get some of that early season snow up a little higher than the others?
Yeah, that's, like I was saying, one of our big concerns is that spring snowpack is a lot different than a fall snowpack. And even though these areas feel really familiar to people and maybe give them a sense of comfort, it is a much different snowpack going into November and December. And so that's why we're really trying to reach people in October and in November, either in person or with a lot of these virtual communications, to allow them or inform them that it is the backcountry. It's a really raw snowpack, especially preseason. No skier compaction has been happening. No control has been done at all throughout the season. It is just a backcountry snowpack that happens to be in terrain that you're familiar with.
Katie, what's your target opening date for Aspen Snowmass, and how are you addressing this, the early season appetite that I think we all anticipate?
Yeah, so our target date is Thanksgiving Day, November 26th, for both Aspen Mountain and Snowmass, in which we hope to be open. If we get really great snow and temps, we'll try and open on the 20th. But to your point, Howie, what we start seeing right when the snow falls, and to what Nikki just mentioned, is we see people going up our mountains without a care. It can happen early November if that's the case, or even late October. So we're really activating a lot of signage at the base of our resorts, at every single portal. We've got, I think, 13 access points onto our 4 resorts. So we've really got to load it up there. We're letting them know that nothing's been mitigated. It's uncontrolled. So to Nikki's point, you're working on snowpack that's unfamiliar, but you're on familiar terrain. We're working with an accreditation piece. So we really ask as people come in to get their ski passes, or this year, since everything will be done online, we'll be sending everyone with a ski pass some information about uphilling and the safety that you need to be aware of, not only with snowpack, but with operations, right? We've got charged snowmaking lines, we've got snowcats moving around the hill, we've got hydrants that are at times leaking and creating big ice patches. So we just have to be aware that, help our constituency be aware that operations are in place. So those are the two big pieces that we'll be working with this fall, along with, to Nikki's point, we're doing one virtual town hall. We'll probably hopefully get two in, where we can invite people into the conversation, allow the community to ask questions and to hear what our plans are in that respect. And even though we're opening Snowmass in Aspen on the 26th, the four mountains get utilized. Highlands has some incredibly steep terrain. As you know, people really have a hankering to get up in the bowl area. And again, that's not controlled, and that's quite steep. So those are our big pieces. And then just working with the guide services and making sure that we're on the same page that they are in respect to what people need to know before they head out there.
Yeah. It's interesting that we've heard Brendan and you now, Katie, have mentioned the guide services. And, you know, I've been around long enough to remember when you didn't want to ski with a guide because that meant you weren't tough enough or whatever. And we've seen, you know, the guide culture slowly emerge in the US, I should say. Canada's a different animal. Do we think, and I'd open this up to any of you, do we think that how much of a service is guiding in this equation, and will this bring guiding to the next level, to the European level, where it is just, it's a great experience and you can learn a ton?
I'll start really quickly and then turn it over. That's a great question. I think that our Aspen Expedition and Aspen Alpine Guides, their business has been growing through the process. We've really taken an effort to partner with them through our ski and snowboard schools. So we've got a lot of our guests that take private lessons, and we do group lessons and locals clinics where we will take people and educate them about uphilling gear. How do you put your skins on? How do you hydrate? How do you dress and layer? And we'll move them through that process of uphilling. And then our pros, some of our pros cross over into the guiding service, but others will certainly recommend and move that guest or that group of guests into the next step, which would be with the guiding service. So our hope is that we're promoting the idea of having a guide out in the backcountry. I don't know that it could get to the level of professionalism that Europe does have, but it would be really great to see it move in that direction.
Howie, may I speak? Go ahead, Mike, please.
Howie, I think that was a really great point, and you know, I totally echo what you said. I remember, you know, back in the day of learning how to backcountry ski, wanting to do it yourself, and you know, reading books and getting a mentor, and you know, building up that way. I think the culture has changed a bit. We're seeing it across the board in our sports that there is, first of all, there's more access to high quality guiding with really trained professionals. From the East Coast, we recommend it a ton. If people are going to go out west and they're going to fly somewhere or drive somewhere and then get into snowpack they haven't been paying attention to all year long, you know, a guide can be really useful. One, for safety, but also for maximizing the amount of, you know, fun you can have. And more people are taking it up. I would balance that out though by saying that explosive growth that we're seeing in terms of sales, there just aren't enough guides. So I think it's a bigger picture than that. I think guiding will grow and continue to grow and be a awesome resource, especially for people who can afford it. But when you're looking at more and more people getting into backcountry skiing, and some people doing it for a variety of reasons, including not having to buy a season's pass, or using the money they would have spent on a season's pass to buy the more expensive backcountry equipment, there's still a lot of room for education and making sure people can learn how to travel safely on their own and grow that way. Sorry, Kim.
Kim, go ahead.
Perfect point. Really good point, Mike, and one that I would echo. I would also say how you asked you asked a question within a question there, but I'll say, first of all, guiding is really important to the equation. I'll use this case study. I grew up also in the climbing industry. We saw the same thing. We saw a boom in climbing. Climbing's dangerous, backcountry skiing is dangerous. Own that right from the start. So the question became, how do we educate more people as we saw this booming, growing, and it has continued to do that. And education, warnings, this whole strategy around how to prepare people so that they can mitigate risk and create more security within the activity. I think that the ski guiding has really established itself as well. The fact that Katie talks about AMGA training for the ski patrol, in addition to all the things that they already need to know, that's a statement of a change. The fact that most people who go to Canada, which is in North America considered some of the best powder skiing and the lodge trips, those are mostly guided trips. And if you talk to anybody, they say, the first time guided trip, I didn't think I was going to be, I know everything. I thought I knew everything. I actually didn't know anything. I realized I had the best teacher for a week. I got the goods every day because they knew exactly where to go. They are a mountain manager, a forecaster, a technique teacher. They're everything rolled up into one. And I think one of the best investments, if you want to really learn what's going on, is investing in a guide. Not only that, it's a great way to learn what you don't know and continue to progress. So I think guiding is awesome on all levels, and that we need to promote it. I mean, Nikki's a guide. She does that. We all have had some level of experience, but this is, again, part of the conversation of who needs to be in that conversation. But yeah, absolutely support that. And the last point is, if you look at the trend in Europe, you look at the trends in Europe around snow sports, almost everybody backcountry skis in one way or the other. Guides are established. If you're a guide, that's like having a master's degree. You are a respected professional. So we're getting there. Aspen is one of the places. Jackson is one of the places. There's a number of places, Mount Rainier, where guiding has been a part of that history forever. So don't be afraid. Use a guide. It's worth the investment and super fun, actually.
Well, certainly, I mean, I would agree with everything you said, but there is a barrier to entry there. And certainly for young people, that's a tough one. People that haven't, got a lot of extra resources. And I don't think we'll solve that here. So I'm going to go to the callers real quick, and I'm going to direct this question to you, Brendan. This is from Chad Bracklesberg. Climbing gear manufacturers for years have included safety warnings and other safety messaging with their products. Why have manufacturers of backcountry gear not adopted something similar with an avalanche awareness message? And why have online retailers not adopted something similar of including awareness messaging in a product shipment? Now, that's a loaded question because you're not an online retailer. But I think that here is, in my view, a place where the local brick and mortars have it way up on the backcountry.coms because these conversations happen at the shop. Can you address some of what Chad was bringing up there, Brendan?
Sure. I mean, the first thing I'd say is in all honesty, it's probably a bandwidth issue from the manufacturer side of things. The age-old story of Black Diamond getting sued and then, having to consequently put safety information on their harnesses is well established in our industry. But I mean, it's a very fair question and it's a super valid point. All I can do is speak to what we try to do in store and through our events. Like I said, I have anxiety over selling someone who pulls up in a Tesla a really expensive package, and I know they're not going to follow the safety protocols and the educational channel that they should, and that keeps me up at night because they could kill themselves, they could kill me. The stakes are high backcountry skiing. It's not like running where you just buy a pair of shoes. So we try to streamline our messaging through a 9-day backcountry oriented event that we call our Mountain Festival. And there's over 80 events over 9 days, and we work with local guiding outfits, to not only show these customers the right way of doing things, both ethically and just operationally, but then they get a sense of what to do if the parking lot's full and you show up. You either dig your spot out old school style and deal with it, or you go to the next parking lot, or what do you do if people are putting in a ill-advised skin track above you? So could retailers do more? Always. Do we have an inherent responsibility to do more? For sure. And I think brands do as well.
It's funny. I think about the disclaimer that we have on our masthead, which in a nutshell says, if you do all this stuff, you may die. And I always laugh because to me, it's just, well, duh. I mean, yeah, there's many ways you can die in the backcountry, but for many people, and I experienced this firsthand more than ever last year, even here at my local resort, once it closed, it was like jeans and flip-flops, people just really without a concept of what was at stake. And so that messaging, I think many of us, it may well be a bandwidth issue, certainly, but it's a cultural issue that we probably need to we probably need to let go of it a little bit and really drill back down to that 101 messaging over and over and over again. And Brendan, you brought up your mountain festival. That's going to be, I don't believe you're having that this year. That's going to be tough to bring that many people together. How are you going to replace that messaging that was so built into that program?
To be honest, I don't think that we can on that scale. Involving 3,000 or more event participants, I don't think we can really replace that. But what we can do is double down on our, messaging, how we interact with customers, where we steer them, how we steer them there, trying to address the real concerns of affordability and inclusivity. There's a lot of tough answers there. Tough questions with hard answers maybe. So, all we can do is control what we have control over within our four walls. And I feel like that's why the shop's been around for 42 years, because we do a good job there.
Yeah. And Mike, a lot of the educational and community stuff you guys do at OGE is inside. You have a great space where you can roll your racks out of the way and play movies and have presenters, etc. I'm assuming that those opportunities are probably not part of the plan this year, or are they?
Yeah, we haven't had, we shut down all of our community events, bringing people together earlier this year. And we haven't had an in-store event since then. We have started doing outdoor events and demos and plan to continue. And we may actually do more than we have in the past outside, just because we have the resources, since we're not doing weekly in-store events. And believe it or not, doing things offsite takes a bunch of resources, but we can actually do it with fewer people, because the setup and breakdown of the store is actually fairly time intensive. So yeah, we're hoping to partner with some of our local ski hills, and especially ones that promote uphill or backcountry travel, and meet new users and meet people on the snow and share with them there.
Back to the Q&A block here. Ventura Dan has a question, and I'll just read it to each of you. From a dealer retailer standpoint, what do you want to see from the brands on Avi safety messaging? More content, so people showing up are at the shop are more prepared, more general support and messaging directing people to resources local Avi centers provide, more packaging and pop material. Nikki, I guess I'd direct that toward you, and I think what the question is asking is, how we get back to messaging. If I'm a retailer in your neck of the woods, how can I work with you to have messaging front and center? Again, get back to this 101 thing. Obviously, the Avi report on the door, great place to start. What else can a retailer do?
Yeah, so it's kind of everything that he just said. So starting from internally training all of the employees. So I think hosting one of the Know Before You Goes in-house, getting all the employees on the same page so that they all have the same answers as soon as people walk in the door. And then when people walk in the door, maybe if they're looking at backcountry ski boots or they're looking at skis and they've kind of been staring at it for a while, having a process that these employees run through. So they approach, they ask, like, have you taken, like, are you interested in backcountry skiing? Have you taken any educational courses? Do you know where to find your local avalanche information? And pointing them on that path. As well, these shops, these brands are probably a media outlet that some of the users that don't know about us may be following. So they probably follow their shops on social media, or they come in the shop looking for information. So kind of advertising or showing us through there. The UAC is actually putting on a social media campaign this fall. So we've created unbranded avalanche education content. It's available to anybody, brands, shops, anybody who has social media that wants to spread this information. They can just post it. And that will all lead up to 3 live stream events in October, like a Know Before You Go, a Get the Gear, and another avalanche related live stream. So posting that on boards and shops, pushing it on their social medias and reaching some of the normal users. So kind of all of it. So, but I think getting everybody who works there on the same page to start, so everybody has the same answers and everybody is informed on how to answer all the questions, I think is the first step.
Right. You mentioned social media several times, and I know that, you know, athletes and influencers, brands and media all have an obligation there, or certainly an opportunity to send the right message, but also all too often the wrong message can come off too. Eric Henderson from Boulder, who many of us know, asks about what athletes and influencers should be considering. And Kim, I direct this to you because you have an athlete team. What are you telling them about their messaging and how they can contribute to positive outcomes?
Well, I think they're telling me as much as I'm telling them. I mean, they're the practitioners. And so our athlete team spans the scope of guides, of professional athletes, of all sorts of different things, forecasters. So it's not just with the athletes. I think Nikki said this, you know, it permeates our whole organization. It's a mentality. I think the athletes in particular have really strong platform and position to speak to this. And I could use call out a number as examples, but they're on that message too. And they are promoting that message constantly. A lot of the athletes are guides as well. So again, I think they're also talking about, don't be afraid of the backcountry. There's this progression idea. So, you know, an opportunity has impacts and considerations. This is a big opportunity for Snowsports, the backcountry. We all recognize that. Well, it wasn't a great opportunity became a much bigger concern because of what we saw, but we're addressing that as well. I think the athletes, the staff, all of us, and many more, sharing the resources and understanding where the handoff is. I'll give you a great example. When Mike sells a beacon to somebody and they go, yeah, this is the beacon I want, this is why I want it, and they go, could you show me how to use this? That's a handoff moment where Mike goes, maybe we can because we sponsor an avalanche class, but really that exceeds the context of this conversation on the sales count. And there's an opportunity to say, this is the next step. This is the handoff. Let me introduce you to Nikki. Let me introduce you to Ari. The comments that we're seeing coming in are spot on from the retailers. They're saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. I think the resorts have a big role in that as well. I love the idea that Aspen lets people go uphill, of course, but they're teaching about the inbounds uphill is the climbing gym of the snow sports and backcountry world. It's a big step to go from resort skiing to backcountry, just like it is from not climbing to climbing outdoors. These are the places where we call it baby backcountry, where you can practice, you can learn, you can understand what it feels like to go uphill. And that's a baby step leading up to that bigger thing. There's a curriculum everybody needs. it's also a great opportunity for the resorts to diversify. You want to talk about diversification and access. There's risks in the snow sports industry. First of all, climate. Secondly, the inclusion and diversity and the diversity of our people, of our clients. I think allowing people to go uphill, it has a much lower barrier to entry economically, maybe, but sledding, I don't care what you want to do outside. Go outside this winter and do something fun. Try to be safe and learn about all what that means.
Thank you, Kim. So here it is, 10 minutes before the hour. I wanted to just close with a final question and get each of your take on it. We've talked about a lot over the last hour. At the end of the day, what is our obligation? And we would speak to this in personal terms, but we'll start with you, Nikki. What is your obligation in this way, both as a guide, as a forecaster, and as a member of the community?
So for me, my personal product as a forecaster isn't going to change. We're going to continue putting out the forecast every morning from when the season starts to the season ends. So we're trying to effectively communicate the risks associated with avalanches to as many users as possible. So our main focus is making sure all of those users have access and know how to get these resources, and that we're communicating it effectively throughout the whole season. I think that's going to continue, and I think just finding ways to reach more users, get them educated preseason, and make sure that they know where all the resources lie is kind of my big focus of the season.
Right. And what is your website?
Our website is utavi.org.
utavi.org.
Let me make sure it's not .com.
The Utah Avalanche Center.
Yeah.
You can Google it. Katie, what's your obligation there at Aspen?
Great question. I think we really are a community that, and I think our CEO drives it from the top, but we just support snow sports. To Kim's point, get out and do something and know what you're doing. So I think our obligation is to support the health of our community, to really also support the operations team and what they need to do to make sure that our resorts can stay open, and then educate and reach out, pull our community together, collaborate with different groups. And I appreciate the athlete comment as well. Aspen Snowmass has some athletes that they sponsor, and they give us avenue into social media at a different level of credibility, so we can get messaging out and partner with them, not only on daily conditions, but on making good choices. If you are going to leave the boundary, we have an open boundary policy in Aspen Snowmass, and people can exit into the backcountry at any time. So we really want to collaborate with all of our partners and make sure that we're moving together forward with a commitment to uphilling, to backcountry, and to making sure that people know what it takes to stay safe out there and to make better choices if they need more information.
Excellent, thank you. Mike, what's your obligation in this conversation?
I think it's to continue to work in our community to make sure people have the tools they need and know what education they need to get. Like Kim said, you know, we have a customer who comes in and is going to drive to the Chick Chocks, or maybe not this year, or go to the White Mountains, fly out west, go to Teton Pass, and their buddy told them they need a beacon and a shovel. That's a great time to say, that's awesome, you do need that. You also need a probe, and if you don't know how to use any of it, it's worse than worthless. So you need to get training, you need to get that experience. You either need to practice before you go or set time aside when you get there to learn the basics and go with someone experienced. You know, a question came up in the question and answer also about, you know, how do you do this more inclusively? And I would just say it's kind of a golden age in backcountry skiing right now. The gear has gotten so good. More and more resorts are allowing uphill travel so you can practice more safely. And actually the price points have come down here and there. And we sell used gear on consignment, which gives our local customers an opportunity to enter the sport for a fraction of the price, 10, 20, 30% sometimes for a few-year-old product. And so I think we do have an obligation and responsibility to getting those new users out there as best we can, but also a big responsibility in making sure they're aware of what they're getting into when they're not just going to sit on a chairlift, but go into the backcountry and be responsible for their own health, safety, the others around them that they see or may not see. So yeah, doing the best we can to have those conversations and, not being like dogmatic, but just letting people know that they need to be aware of this and providing resources where we can with local guide services or even recommending services if people are traveling somewhere, again, to the Chick-Chocks. We have great resources for Chick-Chocks, the White Mountains, and most of the major mountain ranges out west that different people from the store have used, and we can pass along contacts and websites and whatever and let people do their own work also.
Excellent. Brendan, what's your obligation there?
I think obligation is a great word. We view things like this as a great opportunity. If I rewind 10 years ago, what led us to create the Mountain Festival was we would do in-store avalanche education seminars. And, we have about a 2,700 square foot space. We move the racks aside, and it's unbelievable, the demand and the hunger. And this was a decade ago. So that to me speaks tremendous volumes as to how retailers can activate within their own community. Like I mentioned, that's partnering not only with your staff to have quality and thorough messaging, but also partnering with your local avalanche center, your local guiding outfits, the Forest Service. It can be a great collaborative exercise that ultimately is, rewarding and way more exciting and fun than selling socks, even though that's sweet too. But it's a great opportunity, and I think at the end of the day, you can view it as an opportunity to turn these new users not only into ethical and safe backcountry travelers, and that perpetuates itself in time, but you can also have an opportunity to turn them into defenders of wild places, and to really double down on their interest in their own mountains.
Amen to that. Kim, what's your obligation?
Hey, my obligation is to end in 2 minutes because Nick showed up here. So beyond that, I'll sum up like this: do no harm. Do no harm to our customers, to our access, to our environment, and to who we are as a community. And I could say a lot more, but honestly, that's what I think about it. Do the right thing and everything that falls out from that, and be involved.
Yeah.
Like now, and everybody who's on this session. So thanks for caring, everyone.
Yeah, I keep saying to my friends and staff, be kind. I think those of us who are experienced here have an obligation to be good and patient with some of the new users we're going to see. And I want to thank each of you for joining me today. It's been really fun. I hope we get to do it again. And I'll turn it over to my fellow Western State Colorado University alum, Nick Sargent.
All right, thanks, Howie. Huge thanks to you, and huge thanks to all the guests. This is such a great conversation, and one we look forward to pursuing. But thank you for joining us as we prepare to enter a season unlike any of us have seen before. I think you summed it up very well. Be kind. We're going to get through this successfully by working together and by working as an industry. Recording of the town hall will be posted on SIA's website tomorrow morning for those that want to review it. And otherwise, have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.